Hey, welcome everyone. This is AI in Education, Custom Bots GPTs, and it is our July showcase with John Swope and Tina Austin. We are a subgroup of a bigger AI in Education, and bigger, I mean more than 2,700 members from around the globe and counting. We're here to share resources and information, network, connect with each other over issues of AI in education. And specifically, our group is about custom bots. And I know the name is custom bots, but it's really broad. That's also apps, and John is going to share apps and other kinds of platforms, agents, simulations, and we've been lucky to have presenters sharing all of the above for the last 12 months. And I'm your host, Casandra Silva Sibilin. I'm really excited to welcome you. And before turning it over to them, here are three quick things to know. Everything is in our meeting notes. So the first one is that our group is all about sharing resources. And one of the missions of the group when we got started was to talk about our experiences with different platforms. So you'll see the meeting notes have a link to a collaborative document that we started back in our very first meeting. And the collaborative document includes a platforms tracker where we take notes on pros and cons of different platforms for making bots. If you're totally new to custom bots, you're not sure what I'm talking about right now, still welcome. And you'll see real life examples, which is the best way of learning. Number two, top thing to know is beyond these monthly meetings, there are other opportunities for networking. We have a new Slack channel for talking about collaborations and sharing the work that you're up to. And the place to get extra reminders about our subgroup events is the directory. And that, again, is all in the meeting notes. And final thing is this group is really shaped by you, and thanks to all of you and the presenters. And the fact that we're doing showcases is because of feedback that we have. The way we structure the showcases are your feedback. So please keep sharing the feedback. And the exit ticket is there when we wrap up to tell us if you have more ideas for future ones. And now we are going to hear from John Swope. He's an education technologist. He's been building large-scale open online courses on Open edX. He chairs the Open edX Educators Working Group, and you can see him sharing his work on LinkedIn. He shares a weekly AI microapp focused on some area of course development or assessment. To connect with him and follow his work, the LinkedIn is there in the meeting notes, and he'll also tell you about a special event that he will be doing next week. And over to you, John. Thank you so much for coming to us again to celebrate the showcase, and very excited to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you, Cassandra, and thanks everyone for being here in the middle of, we're in the middle of July, in the middle of summer, so there's a lot of dedication here. And as Cassandra, as everyone was coming on and the tiles were coming up and you're talking about the 1 year anniversary, I thought this feels a lot like Peloton for those that do Peloton. Like we need, kind of 1 year shout outs, call out names from folks. Like I recognize a few folks that were here in the beginning. There's Justin, Mohammed, David, John. Yeah, we all get Peloton awards here. And also, we mentioned, we come to this group and it's called Custom Apps and GPTs, but we're talking about, bots and apps and GPTs and tutors, and quite frankly, they all kind of, interact with the user in different ways, but they're all using the same technology behind them. We're all using generative AI behind them, and so everything that we talk about, I think, is and can be relevant to what we are working on. We're all working on something that has the same strengths and weaknesses. And so that gets me into this kind of reflection on 1 year of working with custom apps and what I've learned, which hopefully is applicable to everyone here. And I thought that a nice way to start this was to just get right into what actually happened a year ago. Like, what did we actually look at a year ago? So I figured I'd share the first app that I shared on this group. I think I shared 3 or so, but this is a 26-second video, and I'll talk through it as it goes. So I pulled this up from LinkedIn. So this was an app that took content and created learning objectives. So I just copied some content from Wikipedia, and now I'm putting it into a micro app and saying I want a course on ultimate frisbee, and saying I want to get learning objectives with these particular Bloom's taxonomy verbs. And the app at the end spits out 3 Bloom's taxonomy verbs based on kind of the instructions that I gave in the prompt that we can't see here. And that's the basic concept of a micro app. And that's what was built 1 year ago that was shared. And so keep that in mind because we're going to come back to that. And I'll present again. I always do this kind of switching back and forth. And sorry about that. Okay, so like Casandra said, my name is John Swope. I've spent 12 years as an education technology specialist. And what's relevant for context here is that I come from the world of instructional design and building, especially large open online courses. And because I'm a technologist, I get more involved in kind of the games, simulations, integrations involved with those courses. And so now I would say about 60% of my time is dedicated to building AI apps and custom app development, which go into these kinds of courses. Because AI has exploded the amount of things that we're able to do, I think, with education and assessment. And as far as how we're going to go through this, I put together an agenda slide. I often don't put together agenda slides, but I did for this one because what I realized as I went through and built this presentation is that I kind of did the opposite of what they tell you. I went from specific to generic. So we are pulling from specific examples to figure out what we've learned and what that means for the future. So I'm going to start with the what, which is the apps that I work with to kind of give context where I'm coming from with this, the perspective that I have. And then the now, which is what have we learned? What's our reflections on the past year and the future? What might the future of 2025 and going forward in 2026 look like for custom app development? So I'll go through this quickly because to shave a little time off, but apps are kind of what I just showed you, these customizable web apps that perform tasks with AI. And like with other apps like custom GPTs, what you can do is you can modify or build these apps by defining what are the steps you want your user to go through, what is the knowledge that you want the AI to have to focus on, and what are the prompts. You build the prompts for the apps, and then you can share those with your classmates or your colleagues or your classroom. You can integrate those with your LMS so you can get scores from your students, and you can measure. So you can measure how your app is being used and where AI is the most effective for you. And so again, this was how it started. I just showed the video, but in the early days, we were only using GPT 3.5. We were using the API to talk to OpenAI. We share those apps via Streamlit, which is a wonderful tool, but it has some weaknesses when we're sharing microapps. Most notably, it shuts off after a day of not using it. And most importantly, it was code-based editing. So we learned very quickly that nobody likes writing code. It's a big kind of blocker for making these kinds of apps. So this is actually some of the code right here that built the app that you just saw, where you write a condition, you write the prompt, if this, then put this in the prompt, etc., which was not accessible for the majority of educators. So over the course of a year, here's how that has developed from the time that, 12 months ago, I gave this similar presentation. So now the product that I work on is called onmicro.ai. It's open source. It's a no-code drag and drop editor. We can use all the popular models, so Gemini, Claude, OpenAI, Perplexity. It's embeddable. You can integrate these apps into your LMS via LTI. So again, you can kind of authenticate your students, figure out who completed the interaction. There are now voice capabilities, which we'll take a look at, and rubric-based scoring. So we can have interactions with an AI and then score it based on an instructor rubric. And I'll show what one of these looks like. And I forget if I can share my sound. I'll try here. So it says I might be able to. Okay. So what I have here is one of the newer apps. This is in the medical context. We have a patient coming in, and we're going to play the role of a doctor who's going to try to figure out what's wrong with Gilbert is his name. And this comes from actual Harvard case study. So in the back end, we have a case study with all of Gilbert's information uploaded. So the AI knows this, but we as the user have to kind of discern some of this. So Gilbert comes in and says, hey, doctor, my chest has been hurting and that's not normal. And I'll ask Gilbert, hi, Gilbert, tell me about your symptoms. And what Gilbert says is having this really bad chest pain, sweating a lot, He was at a club last night, had a few drinks, and then this chest pain hit him, and it's been really uncomfortable. So I can ask him something like, now I can use the voice interaction. So I can say something like, okay, Gilbert, do you have any history of asthma or heart conditions?
No, I don't have any history of asthma or heart conditions. I mean, I've had some issues in the past, like seizures related to drug use. And I did have an alcohol-related car accident a while back, but nothing about asthma or heart problems. Just, trying to deal with some stuff in my life right now.
Can I get one thumbs up? Did people hear that from the computer? Okay, good. All right, great. Thank you. Okay, so learn some things here. So let's ask one more question. Tell me about that drug use, and were there any drugs involved yesterday at the club?
Well, I really don't want to get into it too much, but yeah, I did use some stuff last night at the club. I had a lot to drink and, I snorted some cocaine too. I know it was a bad idea, and I'm kind of ashamed to talk about it, but that's when the chest pain started. Just trying to figure things out, you know?
So that's the kind of the crux of this particular case study. So this person did some cocaine in the evening, and now his chest hurts. And so now, as a clinician, we have a decision of what's the next course of action to take. And I could, I could analyze this in all kinds of different ways, but I just want to simply say, all right, what do I want to, what's smart for this particular user? And if you didn't know about the drug use, then you might suggest beta blockers. So we're actually going to do that here, and we'll get some feedback from the AI that tells us that this is actually the wrong idea to do in this case. So we've correctly elicited that Gilbert's chest pain is cocaine induced. However, if we administer beta blockers, that's going to lead to an adverse reaction. They are stimulants. It'll cause an increase in blood pressure and heart rate and worsen Gilbert's condition. So the best choice here would have been benzo, based on what we should have learned in this conversation. So that's the kind of simulation type exercise that one can build using AI powered apps of any different kinds. And so here's where the bit of self promotion is. Let me just present again here. If folks want to see more of this kind of demos from other universities, what they're doing, and get the open source playbook so you can deploy this on your own without paying any kind of license fees. AI costs money, obviously, but no kind of license fees. I have an event coming up on July 23rd at 4:30 Eastern time, and this is the link, and it's in the agenda, and I'll put it in the chat afterwards, so you don't have to kind of scramble to get this link. But I do encourage anyone who is interested in learning more about these to attend that. So, with these kinds of apps, and I don't just build these; I build kind of ad hoc custom apps as well. And so, what have I seen in the last year that is either getting me excited or I see successful use cases of using AI in an educational context? A couple examples come to mind. One is, so my background, like I said, is in MOOCs and large open courses. And in MOOCs, the historic, maybe the main problem with MOOCs is that it's impossible to give feedback to 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 students. And so we've struggled for a long time about what to do about this problem. And so I'll take a specific example. We have a course in grant writing, and the course, in this course, the instructor asks the student to write the first draft of a introduction for a grant application. And historically, only the users who paid for a verified certificate could get any kind of feedback on that writing assignment, because there were just too many of them. So what we did is we created a custom app that we embedded into the course that gave the students feedback based on the instructor's rubric. And when we've done experiments, we've actually seen that the feedback that the AI provides is pretty close to what the instructor provides. And we've done this experiment not just for this course, I've done variations of this experiment. And not only is the feedback relatively similar, you might call it like 75% rule of thumb, not all that's exact measurement, but always the AI is going to be more thorough than the human, and it's obviously going to be immediate. So now our users who are in a MOOC, even our free users, can get immediate feedback as much as they want for writing assignments. So that's very exciting to me as someone who's been in that space for a while. Another one that I like a lot is this, I'm calling it pre-validation. I don't know if a better word will come out for it, but pre-validation of student submissions. So In many educational contexts, there are these scenarios where students have to submit some sort of large assignment, a large, final essay or a portfolio. So the school that I'm working with here is getting portfolio submissions from students. And the worst thing that can happen in those scenarios is that the student, for whatever reason, doesn't submit something that is ready. Maybe they didn't read the instructions well enough. Maybe they just didn't put enough effort in. And it leads to this awkward scenario between the student and the instructor, because the student, well, let's start with the instructor for a second. The instructor has the choice of whether they, penalize the student heavily, whether they kind of, skip over it, whether they go through this kind of rigorous back and forth to change something that's already been created, which is always hard. And the student, like, they're just, they want to get a good grade, and it's a shame if, kind of just wires got crossed and they missed something here. So what we could do is we can set up this pre-validation where AI can assess something before it goes to a human reviewer. And so an AI can assess based on a rubric and let the student know essentially if they are on track. And you can even set it up so that a student has to achieve a certain threshold of score before it gets submitted to a human. So what that means is the student gets additional practice, additional feedback. They feel more confident when they do submit something, that they're on the right track. And the instructor gets higher quality inputs. They're not reviewing things that are half done or that they've got to go in this kind of long back and forth. They're getting, inputs that they know at least have fulfilled the requirements that an AI can assess. So it's kind of a win-win that saves everyone, I think, time, gives everyone more confidence, and makes this, high stakes assessment a little bit easier while keeping the human as the one that's in control here. And then there are the common things, language practices is really a lot of promise there with AI, clinical scenarios that I just kind of showed. All these things I think have been showing early signs of success in the last year or so. So here's where we get a little more general. So a framework that I like when working with AI applications is TPACK, which makes sense because this is an education technology framework for integrating technology into education scenarios. And it works for AI. And what it says is that when you have this marriage of technical knowledge, content knowledge, and pedagogical knowledge, all wrapped up in the context of where this technology is operating, that's when you get the most successful deployments of technology. And I want to just go through very quickly how I translate that to this world of AI, which is its own, has its own kind of idiosyncrasies. So one is content knowledge. I think it is important when we are trying to leverage AI in educational context to allow our users to upload or have control over their own specific content rather than relying on AI's general knowledge base. We know that AI is smart. We know that it has a lot of data. We used to say in the past that AI is creative. I think that after a couple of years, we're kind of walking back from that. We know that AI can, if you ask AI to give you 5 business plans, that combine a banana and a cell phone, like it'll give you 5 business plans. So it seems very creative at times, but it thinks in these grooves. It kind of thinks in these safe mediums. So you ask it the same question, you start to realize, okay, AI repeats itself quite a bit. So maybe it's not as creative as we thought. So as an educator or as a student, we want to be able to say, here's the content that I want you to focus on. I want you to focus on this. And that's where content knowledge comes in. Then technical knowledge, which is basically AI literacy. It's AI literacy around AI in general, and then your specific application. So how does AI in this application deal with hallucinations? What's the propensity for it? How does it deal with bias? Basic understanding of evaluating outputs is important for anyone that's going to use an AI-powered tool, I think. And then pedagogical knowledge. I see a lot of this. I see a lot of applications that in the name of ease of use, the first thing they're going to strip out is pedagogical customizability. And, it's essentially a wrapper that says, hey, this is a pretty good pedagogy. Let's use this. It doesn't give the instructor any kind of means to customize that. And I think that's I think instructors are hesitant to be in that kind of a world where the technology kind of controls a vast part of their pedagogy. So I think an important principle for us going forward is how do we give our instructors more pedagogical control when they're using AI? And it's difficult because there's a trade-off between ease of use and pedagogy that I think people struggle with. And so if we go very big picture, again, to the most general, I think that if this is the slide to remember about what do we as people who experiment with or build AI-powered applications need to think of, I think it's 2 things. I think it's agency and insights. Agency is, if you look around at your institution or on LinkedIn at the adopters who like using AI and think that it affects them in a positive way. What I see, at least, is that to a person, they all believe they have some control, some agency over AI. And applications, when we develop applications, they have this tendency to take that control away in the name of ease. And so, especially in education, we have to be wary of that and try to impart the feeling, not just on the kind of the early adopters, but on the kind of the more hesitant folks of you are the one that's in control here. And then insights. Ultimately, most of us are in the teaching business. Very few of us are okay with simply trusting that because something uses AI, it is better. So we need measurable insights when AI is successful in certain cases and when it doesn't work very well, because there will be both of those cases. And I think an important part of the future is measuring and understanding in our particular context, when is AI working and when is it not working? And that all comes down to measurement and insights. And if you look, and to be clear, I like all of these apps, but to be clear, what I'm trying to say here is that in 2025, I think we're still struggling, both, individuals like ourselves and larger agencies, like we still struggle with bringing both of these together. So like Magic School and Conmigo, great programs, but they pull out a lot of the agency for educators. I think with Magic School, you put in a little prompt and say, I have fourth graders, I have fifth graders. That's not a whole lot of control. Whereas tools that give us a lot of control, custom GPTs and Claude, they lack the insights that we as educators need. How are my students using these custom GPTs that I've put out into the wild? And then Google, which I love Google. I think Google's going to do great things here. But for the last week or so, I've seen a lot of negative pushback, which we often see when big companies put out stuff. But I've seen a lot of negative pushback because they've somehow kind of missed the boat on both of these. They've pulled out a lot of the agency for educators, and there's not a lot of great ways to analyze how students are using some of the new Google for Education tools. So I think they'll improve that. But again, like I see the failures of some of these, or the lack of adoption for some of these, as stemming from agency and insights. So I don't know how I'm doing on time, but I will leave this group with this, which is how do we going forward build custom bots and GPTs that provide our educators and our students with both agency and insights so that AI is a tool that enhances their teaching rather than replaces it. And with that, I am finished, and I'll cede it back to Casandra. And thanks, everyone, for your time today.
And we are going to hear from Tina Austin, and she is an educator, AI strategist. She has more than 2 decades experience teaching and consulting in higher education. Since 2022, she's been at the forefront of integrating AI into classrooms. She teaches courses that span bioethics, regenerative medicine, social sciences, and gender studies. And in addition to her teaching, she also collaborates with colleges and universities around the world as an AI consultant, helping institutions navigate this evolving landscape. She was recently named one of ASU and GSV's 2025 Leading Women in AI. And I heard she's currently working on her first book. Very excited to hear that. We'll keep an eye out. And yeah, she does strategizing consulting. So I put her LinkedIn. You can follow her. She's one of my favorite people, along with John, to follow on LinkedIn. Always insightful and bringing in a new perspective. So her LinkedIn is there, and also her email if you're interested in asking about her workshops. And over to you, Tina.
I was there for a work. I was in New York for a workshop at a university, and then bumped into Casandra, and so that was fun. It's always great meeting all these wonderful people. AI's really connected me to some amazing people, including Casandra, which was one of my first supporters here in this field. So you might be wondering, what do I use custom GPTs or bots for? I've actually been able to incorporate it in all these different classes. It started off with, as Casandra mentioned, biomedical research, and then eventually I was able to find ways to use it in different classes for critical thinking. Now I've also been able to work with faculty, I don't know if you can see this, on different use cases for custom bots. So I made this with Napkin AI. You can use that for visualization. And here, I'm going to talk a little bit today about what are some specific use cases, like how do you use it for simulation GPTs, for drafting feedback tools, for example, writing letters of rec. How are some ways students have been using it, and where can we get the most benefit from STEM to humanities and communication? But mostly, I want to start with some concerns. So why are we even doing? We're not just using custom bots for the sake of bringing AI to our classrooms. Um, I think, as Jason mentioned in his last month, the first question is, does this actually help with the productive struggle of learning? Because, with custom bots like custom GPTs or Gemini Gems, you may not be able to actually see the back end of what students are putting in. So where is the actual benefit of using these today? And I'm not going to get into all the concerns with AI. We know that AI has all these issues. And so I like to use AI in the classroom for teaching students where the mistakes are. When is it actually a good time to use AI? And I put all this on the slides. Like I said, if you're email me, I'm happy to send some of this material over to you. When you need different perspectives, when do you skip it? And so last year, if you look at the recording from last year, which I can also send that to you, if I know Cassandra has one, I have a copy of that recording as well. I talked about my first use case of custom GPTs. It was really to solve a problem in the classroom. Students were using ChatGPT for practicing preparing for MCATs, and because there wasn't guidance across the board on what mistakes ChatGPT makes, I started with a topic that I was teaching in the classroom, which was about stem cells and how, for example, Dolly the sheep may not be a true clone. And so everybody who was asking this question from ChatGPT was getting the wrong answer. Not that it was deliberately incorrect. It wasn't the answer that I wanted them to get. So we asked them, was it a true clone? They were going on different forms of AI, Gemini, Bard, all of these were giving the wrong answer. So it started off, as I said in my talk last year, with giving customized answers to these questions that ChatGPT often gets wrong. So if you, for example, went to use my custom bot last year, which was called Regenerative Medicine Mentor, and you asked that question, I had put in the knowledge base what I would like what the students to learn. And so I can share some of that later at the end of this talk if there's time, but that was one of my first use cases, and students really got to see not only what the correct answer was, but also mistakes that AI might be making. So one person has made a custom bot. Okay.
We have a lot of hands going up to you.
Okay, good.
It's a little hard to
That's
see.
good. I just want to make sure I don't have to demo this. Okay. So for
Um,
example, if you were to ask it, it would say, no, it's not. And then it would explain what it to do. And later, what I decided to do with my custom bot was, oh, is that a question or just hands going down?
I think they're still saying, yes, we've done bots. You have a question added to the chat.
Awesome.
I'm
Okay.
also going to share with you all the results of the registration survey
Oh,
that we have like a whole variety of experience levels.
oh, fantastic.
Yes.
Yes, that's good to know. Yes, we have about 20, looks like we have 20% roughly on each. Okay, good, good. So yes, please do reach out afterwards if you are need more assistance. So then I ended up teaching some of this particular class with other instructors as a cross-disciplinary collaboration. So students needed to know what they needed to focus on for the quiz. If there was like 3 other instructors we had to collaborate for, and they were often trying to figure out which instructor and how does this relate to someone else's work. So here I would type in, for example, me, which is because I know I can put my name here, and it will say, okay, for this part of the class, this is what I need you to focus on. This was a class on, for example, gender studies and the relation to AI, unlike the biomedical class. So this would say where you need to focus on and what you can prepare for. So that the TA around the clock would not get bothered about the same question in a class of, like, let's say 200 students. So earlier when I was showing you the slide of different classes, which I'm not going to go back to, in a class of, let's say, 2,000 or 1,000 students, some faculty do have that large of a class. It's becoming increasingly hard to have TAs monitor their emails and have students ask the same question. So custom bots were really helpful for helping around the clock. Another class that I taught here was computational biology. And so how did I use a custom bot here and what was the benefit? Again, all of this was to solve a problem. So the problem with that particular class is, let's say, if students that are using the bash terminal, I don't know, can I get a show of hands for anyone who's taught any programming here? Nobody. One person has not done some programming. Okay, a couple of you. Okay. The problem with, let's say if you're teaching them Python, or let's say if you're teaching them Bash, they may or may not know what's wrong with their code. And so one way, one of my other custom bots that I created was practicing some commands together, because here I've inputted information on, okay, let's see, what are you trying to prepare for? Let's say I'm learning Bash here. And it will say, okay, cool, let's start this. What command would you use to do this? How do you get to the home directory? And so the student will work around the clock with it. However, as you can imagine, I don't know if you want to type in the chat, what mistake could possibly happen here if the AI hallucinates, right? Or if there's sometimes it will, with coding, you know, there's sometimes mistakes that could happen. So I didn't have students just use this on their own. I had them actually work with it critically and reflect on some of the mistakes that the AI was giving them. And I got some really good responses here from students saying that this actually not only helped them as a complementary guide to the study guide that they had to prepare for their quiz, but also figuring out what to focus on for a lecture that they've missed. I mean, I don't know how many educators here go off textbook, because textbooks don't always have the exact A to Z of what you want to cover in your classroom. So custom GPTs, I find them to be very helpful for giving them like a guide there. Also created custom gems with both students and faculty. I don't know if anyone here, some institutions are not allowed to use Gemini gems because of certain privacy reasons. Other campuses you can use, you're allowed to use ChatGPT, you can't use Gemini. So I always ask. It's fairly easy. I was just making one like 2 minutes before this talk to make sure that I could share it with you. Let's say you want to, faculty get this request all the time for letters of rec, or trying to do something with their syllabus. You upload your material and so I just called it letter of rec generator. And then if you're not sure while you're making this what to write as the instructions, you can use this little magic button here. You upload what you want it to do, and then it's really that simple. It used to be a year ago, they just came out and they weren't free, but now I think Google is trying to make them free so they can get more people to sign up for them. Again, my go-to is still ChatGPT's custom Gemini, custom GPTs. I don't really personally use Gemini gems as much, but there are some people find them to be easier to work with. And then students, what have my students used it for? So students have used it for letters, they've used it for preparing for job interviews. I've had students that were trying to get into like a certain career field, and they've made custom GPTs so it can quiz them on the interview before they go into the interview and kind of grade or assess how they're doing. And also I've had students use it for fellowships, for preparing for the workforce. There's many other use cases, which I didn't want to fit all of them in one slide. Like John, I also like to have a framework. 1 year later, what is the framework for using these custom bots? And here I made this with Napkin again. First, start with the purpose. So again, for me, all those different bots, and by the way, I didn't get to show you some of my other bots that I created for looking at grading over time. About that later. If you're interested in a workshop for your school, I'm happy to go in more depth. Really, 15 minutes is not enough time to go into anything. I start with a purpose. What are you trying to solve? We had like different scenarios I just showed you today. Then refining it, making sure that your own voice is there. So for every response that my custom GPT gave to students, I had an element of something relating to my class. So it's not just, it's not like they feel that they're talking to an AI which has no awareness of what's going on. For example, one of the prompts I put in there was office hours. You wouldn't know that if you weren't in the class. And then, personalizing it and trusting but verifying. This is very important because I would not put anything proprietary in there. I would not expect the student to put anything proprietary in there. And this is more for like low stakes, another way for them to engage with the class. I would not put anything that is something, if I'm protective of my IP for a particular lesson, I would not upload that there. We all know that ChatGPT, memories, and all the lawsuits and stuff going on. With all that in mind, you want to be cautious, but you can still use it as a way for learning and having students understand the pros and cons of how AI works as a supplementary thing in your classroom, but not as the main go-to. And then, if you feel left behind, I have a step-by-step. You can reach out to me. I'm excited to explore more like cross-disciplinary explorers. Like I said, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect. I'll respond back and approve the connection request. And I just started a Substack this morning. I'm doing, thanks. I feel like I'm going to have more presence on LinkedIn anyway. And yeah, I'm excited to see what's next. Who knows, a year from now.
Tina, congrats on the new Substack. Jeremy's welcoming you. Jeremy Kaplan, he has great Substack himself. So yeah, we're here to support you, to support each other, to cheer you on. And yeah, I have to say, I think you all know this because we're all in the AI education space. Sometimes you open up the media coverage and it's all so negative, and it paints educators as being like passive and just being overwhelmed by this crisis. And who better than John and Tina to show us that you can be empowered, you can build, you can be creative, you can get students to think critically and really integrate AI, but in a thoughtful and responsible way. Now, I think we're going to try a new experiment with breakout rooms. They can be, yes, for whatever you want. This community is for all of you. We've gotten some requests for breakout rooms for networking, and I know we also have questions. So how about we try two breakout rooms? In one of them, John will be there, and you can chat more with John and network with those who are especially want to talk more about some of the things he shared. I put one possible conversation topic there, which was John's takeaway. How do we build custom bots GPTs that provide educators with both agency and insights so that AI is a tool that enhances their teaching rather than replaces it? And in the other room, we'll have Tina, and you can chat more with her and ask questions. And I thought, Tina, from you, maybe one question could be because you shared with us so many use cases, like what use case are you most interested in, and how did it go when you tried it out? I'd love to hear from room one. John, or final piece of advice, given how the conversation went.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure there.
Sorry.
I think that we talked a little bit about the different tools that everyone is using and how quickly they're advancing. And so I think that a takeaway for us is that even if we are trying something and not succeeding at first, communities like this, following with the discussion, like these things are coming, the things that we are, thinking up, like it seems like are just getting more and more possible. And I think we're at an exciting time where one of us, Rodrigo, was saying that, we've gotten past kind of what is AI and, oh my goodness, the students are cheating. And now we're building interesting things. So if we can do that for ourselves and kind of evangelize folks in our organization to do that, I think that a lot of these shifts from AI and education especially will come from this empowerment, and the tools are getting better and better to do that. So that was my takeaway on the fly.
Thank you, John. And that makes you, John, and Tina our first evangelizers, if I may, because you started the whole series. But yeah, I love those messages. Tina, any final advice?
My advice to users is to stay curious and stay optimistic. Treat every custom GPT like it's a sandbox. Ask what else is it that you can do. And really don't be confined to just the examples we gave you. Here, for example, I used custom GPT to create my unblooms method, and I'm interested to get feedback on that. So feel free to provide feedback for me at the end if you like, and reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy rest of July, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Stay connected, stay inspired. And we'll be back in August. The link is right there in the chat. So I hope to see you soon. Thank you very much.